public participation exists precisely to prevent governance from collapsing into a small circle of decision makers who believe they know better than everybody else. It redistributes power outward, away from boardrooms and cabinet tables, back to the citizens whose lives are shaped by those very decisions. Now, it's not always neat, and it's not always comfortable, but democracy rarely is. And if those in power find the Constitution an inconvenient guide, perhaps they might turn to something they like to invoke far more often: spiritual wisdom. The Desiderata offers a simple reminder. Listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story.
Now, fellow Kenyans, let me start by asking you this question. Imagine working in an environment whereby you really think that you matter, that nothing can work out or nothing can be done without your presence. For instance, you are working in a corporate environment or a corporate company whereby the signatures cannot be signed, the boss cannot be seen, or no meetings can be organized without your presence. And then all of a sudden something happens. You know, you put it at the back of your mind that in this company there is nothing, literally nothing can be done without me being involved. Like if I'm not told, or maybe if I'm not asked what we can do, then there is nothing that can happen. So you live with that mentality that there is nothing that can go on without me. Like if I even fail to come to work even a single day, then everything will be messed up. Only one day to wake up and being told or you hear somebody is telling you, or the boss telling you that you are fired. That one will tell you a lot about working chest thumping. It will tell you this, that even in your presence, even in your absence, things will move on. And that one goes to the people that are working. Please, wherever you're working, don't think that you are irreplaceable. You will be replaced, things will move on, and nothing will bother them. For instance, why am I bringing this story? I'm bringing this story based on our political journey and our politicians. Politicians normally think that they are the only people that can be worshipped. That whenever they don't bring CDF, like they don't help people, then there is nobody who can do that. They need to change, and they need to realize that we've been living even without their help. Like for example, right now, since the election happened back in 2022 up to now, how many of you here, you can tell me in the comment section, how many of you here have eaten a politician's money? Pengine umekula 200, you've eaten 3,000, 4,000, 10,000, maybe. You can tell me in the comment section that, Aboni, as for me, I've really enjoyed the politician's money. So that one tells you that you can live even without the politicians. Now, I know majority of us, most of you guys watched the news gang yesterday night. And I normally say that if there is a day, if there are days that you should never miss on Citizen TV, is normally Tuesday during the Explainer, which is normally being held by Yvon Okwara. Wednesday, JK Live, because you know Jeff Koinange, after his reincarnation, Jeff Koinange came a different person. And then on Thursday, during the news gang. Those are 3 days that if at all you miss, please, normally, if at all you will miss those days watching them live, then make sure that you run to Bonita Media, because we normally do a recap of the happening. Before we start with the that, let me humbly request you, fellow Kenyans, that if at all you're meeting for the first time, please don't forget to click the subscribe button. You can as well like, you can share, drop me your comment in the comment section. Tell me what you think and where exactly you are watching these videos from. If you're in the country, it's good to tell me which part of the country you're watching from. And if you're out of the country, I would request you to drop me the code or the flag of the country, or just mention for me. Just mention that, oh, I'm watching from this country. Thank you very much. Those who are watching outside, I really appreciate. God bless you. Asanteni sana. Fellow Kenyans, we've been talking about this issue of public participation, and I really don't know why this government or these politicians normally think that they are normally in charge of everything. Like, for instance, what happened in Nairobi County, whereby Johnson Sakaja went and signed an agreement with William Ruto, and then after signing the agreement of what they want to do in the county, is coming and telling us that is supposed now to engage the public. So my question was, remember when I was talking about this and I asked this question, that now, what is the need of coming for the public participation after you've already signed an agreement? Okay, let's say, for example, that 99.9% of Kenyans, of Nairobians, have disagreed with what you signed with the president. Will you say that, okay, we'll not do what we signed with the president simply because the people have disagreed? You'll continue with what you agree with the president. So these are the things that we really need to look at. Can we listen to Yvon Okwara explaining it, and then we continue?
Public participation is not an inconvenience in Kenya's governance framework. It's not a bureaucratic box to tick. It is a constitutional principle. Yet, increasingly, one gets the uneasy sense that those who wield power see it differently, as an obstacle to navigate, or worse, an irritation to endure. Consider the recent cooperation agreement between the national government and the Nairobi County government, a significant arrangement affecting millions of residents of the capital city. It was signed with great fanfare at State House, of all places. Only afterwards did we hear that public participation would follow. But logically, should it not be the other way around? Public participation is meant to inform decisions, not ratify them after the fact. Because if the residents of Nairobi, the people whose lives will be affected by such an agreement, were to say they do not support it, what then? Does the government unwind a deal already signed? Kenya's courts have confronted this issue many times, and their message has been unmistakable. In 2024, the High Court declared the Privatization Act 2023 unconstitutional, halting plans to privatize several state assets. The court at the time found that the law failed the test of meaningful public participation, both in its quality and its reach. In another decision, the courts made it even clearer. Public participation, they said, must be, and I quote, real and not illusory. Not a cosmetic or public relations act. Not cosmetic, not public relations, not a formality. But perhaps the deeper issue here is not necessarily procedural. Perhaps it is philosophical. Because beyond the legal requirement lies a troubling pattern in the way questions from citizens are treated. Recently, during a television talk show, a host questioned the government's development record against its campaign promises. Instead of addressing the substance of the question, the response was dismissive. The host, viewers were told, simply did not know how to read the manifesto. Officials said they would teach him how to read manifestos. Yet, during that same discussion, it became clear that the specific issue being debated was not specifically mentioned in the manifesto itself. That they were doing was not clarification. It was condescending. Then there is a recent Kenya pipeline company IPO, which struggled to attract some investors. Retail investors stayed away. Foreign investors stayed away too. But the explanation offered was curious. Foreign investors, we were told, had been frightened off by Kenyans questioning the deal. Apparently, these foreign investors were not concerned with the valuation or the books or the fundamentals that investors normally examine. The problem, we were told, was that Kenyans talk too much. The minister went further, lamenting what he described as a country full of armchair experts who question everything, even primary school dropouts. It's a remarkable way for a government to speak about its own citizens. And this tone is not entirely new. Even senior advisors have sometimes responded to criticism with open disdain. On social media, one former presidential economic advisor once dismissed critics bluntly. He said, "If you're ignorant, keep quiet and learn." That posture, that assumption that those in power understand and the public does not, sits uneasily with the spirit of Kenya's constitution. Public participation is embedded not merely as a process, but as a principle. Article 10 lists participation of the people among the national values and principles of governance, binding on all state organs and public officers whenever they make or implement public policy decisions. You see, the Constitution recognizes a simple truth. Government power is not self-justifying. It must be exercised with the consent and involvement of the people. Public participation exists precisely to prevent governance from collapsing into a small circle of decision makers who believe they know better than everybody else. It redistributes power outward, away from boardrooms and cabinet tables, back to the citizens whose lives are shaped by those very decisions. Now, it's not always neat, and it's not always comfortable, but democracy rarely is. And if those in power find the Constitution an inconvenient guide, perhaps they might turn to something they like to invoke far more often: spiritual wisdom. The Desiderata offers a simple reminder. Listen to others, even the dull and the ignorant. They too have their story. Because in a democracy, the people are not an obstacle to governance. They are the reason for it.
The next person is Jamila. And Jamila is talking about what I started by asking. That when I started this conversation, I said that whenever you're working somewhere, please just make sure that you do your job and you go home. Don't feel or don't think that you're very much important, that you are either irreplaceable, because when look at those people who've been working in somewhere for very many years. They've been living in they've been using the vehicle. Like, okay, let's say, for example, let's give a very good example that this picture is how it's going to be clear. The former president, when the former president Uhuru Kenyatta was serving as the president, the first term and then the second term, he used to get everything that he needed. Like, he used to have the escort, presidential escort, everything. And then immediately when Uhuru Kenyatta gave out power, that is how power transition is done. Like, you will be replaced. The vehicle that you normally use, the car, the vehicle, the house that you normally live in will be taken and given to another person. And even if you die, or let's say, for example, you die, you will be replaced. In other words, I'm trying to say that you will be replaced. So can we listen to Jamila talking about this, and then we talk about Bonyo, and then we finalize with Sam Gituku.
This week we were reminded in the most painful way just how fragile life truly is. 6 lives lost in a tragic helicopter crash. 6 families forever changed. Among those who passed away was a member of parliament, a man described by many as someone who fought for his people, someone who will be deeply missed by his family, his friends, and his constituents. He was a politician, an elected leader from the ruling party. But in death, titles fade. What remains is the human being, a father, a colleague, a friend, a son, a husband. What shocked me, however, was what happened after the tragedy. Barely 24 hours later, our political leaders were back at it, on church podiums, standing on top of vehicles, addressing crowds, talking politics, making promises. If elected in 2027, I'll do this and that, as if nothing had happened. And I couldn't help but think, death is so final, so very final. In Islam, we are reminded, kullu nafsun da'iqatul maut, meaning every soul shall taste death. It is the one certainty we all share. The only mystery is when. So what would have gone so terribly wrong if just for a moment our leaders had paused? Paused to remember, to mourn, to pray, or to simply be present for grieving families and a grieving nation. Because sometimes politicians easily fall into the trap of appearing heartless or pretentious. During the funeral, you might not even recognize them as the same people who are politicking so soon after such a tragedy. Suddenly the tone changes, the speeches become solemn, and mourning itself becomes a spectacle. What would have been lost if church services had remained about prayer and not politics? If rallies had been postponed, political meetings cancelled for the moment? If leaders had chosen compassion, chosen utu? Because moments like these reveal something deeper. They show us whether leadership is about service or simply about self. A colleague has died unexpectedly. Someone you knew, someone you met, someone you worked with. The least you can do is respect them, even in death. Right now, families are mourning. A father grieving a son who had begun carrying family responsibility. A wife mourning her spouse. Children and siblings preparing to bury someone they loved. The least we can expect from those who lead us is a pause. A simple human pause out of respect, compassion, and basic human decency. And perhaps that is the reminder this week, the reminder that this week leaves us with, that beyond titles, politics, and the noise, what matters most is how we treat each other in moments of loss. To be human, to show compassion, to have utu.
Now, Bonyo is also, these things that these guys are talking about, I've been talking about them here. Bonyo is talking about goons. On, when was that? Today is Friday, Thursday, on Wednesday. Yeah, if I'm not wrong, on Wednesday, William Ruto was it Kasarani, around Kasarani. And what happened, what shocked me was there were some young men who were smoking weeds. And this weed that they were smoking it in front of the police officers. And the police officers were doing nothing. And I mentioned this and said that every politician normally have goons. Mwanasiasa yote, mimi najua kitu kimoja kwamba wanasiasa wote, kila mwanasiasa anakuwaga na goons. Hata kama uko na goons wako na umetrain goons wako hawafanyi vitu mbaya, lakini every politician have goons, even the president. In fact, kama kuna mtu ambaye kuna goons wabaya ni president, because you will not see him direct talking to them direct, but atakuwa na watu, atakuwa na prefects. Atakuwa na prefects, wewe utakuwa unaongoza hii group, utakuwa unaongoza. So akienda Kisumu, anajua Kisumu liko na watu wangu, akienda Kayole, akienda Kibera, akienda Kasarani, akienda Roysambu, akienda Thika, anajua ya kwamba Thika kuna mtu fulani amekusanya watu tayari. So nikifika pale utafanya 1 2 3 na tunamalizana. Like he doesn't interact with them direct, but now there is somebody and then somebody. So before ugundue ya kwamba these are the president's goons, itakuwa imechukua muda sana. So can we listen to Bonyo?
I pick a bone with Kenya's political class. I will not call them the elites because their conduct as we head towards the polls does not deserve that title. Every single week, we are treated to scenes of political violence and intolerance across the country. Young men and women are kept on standby, not for employment, not for innovation, but for deployment. Deployment into chaos, intimidation, and violence. On this platform, I have previously called out the Ministry of Interior and the National Police Service for what appears to be inaction. tonight I want to shift the spotlight. This responsibility rests squarely at the doorstep of the political class. All of them, elected leaders, aspiring leaders, and those in office. But let's us deal with the facts here. Unemployment in Kenya remains a serious challenge. According to the International Labour Organization, their 2024 estimates indicate that Kenya's unemployment rate stands at about 5.4%. That figure represents thousands of able-bodied young men and women actively searching for work and finding none. In urban areas, unemployment is estimated to hover around 15%, while in rural Kenya, it ranges between 4 and 5%. Behind these percentages are real people, frustrated, idle, and vulnerable to exploitation. And now, here's the real issue. This pool of unemployed youth is being weaponized as the 2027 general election fever gathers momentum. While this is not new, the scale, the coordination, and the brazenness are. There is now a structured market for political violence. There are official rates set for heckling, disruption, and for physical confrontation. The uglier it is at a rally, the costlier it earns in towns and villages. This is no longer a ticking time bomb. It has detonated, and someone within the political class appears to be thriving in this smoke. More disturbing is the sophistication behind it. These mercenaries of democracy are carefully disguised as they accompany elected officials to political events. Their role is introduced as security or bouncers. But if you scratch beneath the surface, many are drawing salaries funded by you, the taxpayer. Some operate under titles like county enforcement officers, casuals within the National Government Constituency Development Fund operations. They sit on official payrolls and are well accounted for. Others are absorbed into youth groups benefiting from the national and county government-funded programs or donor-funded initiatives such as financing locally led climate action, popular as FLOCA. During the week, these young men and women pose as environmental workers, clearing drains, planting trees, sweeping markets, you name it. But as the week eases to the weekend, their tool of trade changes. The rakes, the slashes, the spades, and the brooms disappear. Out comes the rungus, the pangas, and all manner of crude weapons. The perfect setting to breed and sell fear. The tactics is simple. Mask the money trail, finance them indirectly, and create plausible deniability. Political competition in this country should never mutate into organized intimidation. Campaigns are meant to be marketplace of ideas, not battlegrounds engineered by thin-skinned operatives who cannot win arguments without force. We must call these out collectively and unapologetically. Those orchestrating this violence are not strangers. They're amongst us and are custodians of our public funds. We must demand accountability and insist on political fair play. We, the citizens, have a right to assemble, debate, and choose free from fear. Elective leadership cannot be built on intimidation, just like democracy cannot survive on hired violence. Let the people decide, not goons, fear, or coercion.
And finally, we have got Sam Gituku. Sam Gituku is talking about pipeline, Kenya pipeline, and the dream that we've been having.
On Wednesday, the government announced an oversubscription of the Kenya Pipeline Company shares following the much publicized IPO. But as they say, the devil is in the details. First, the privatization of the Kenyan pipeline has been a topic that dominated public discourse for the better part of the year 2025. Many questions were posed, many loaded in suspicion that particular government functionaries were intent at cutting a piece of the KPC cake. But then the government took the sale through the required process, getting Parliament's nod in October 2025. By December, a transaction advisor had been found and the sale commenced on the 19th of January. For over a month, there were public messages put out. Private messages too were sent out to CDSC account holders, commercial banks to their customers, all in a bid to have Kenyans own a piece of the Kenya pipeline. And when time was running out, a 3-day extension was secured. Let's look at the outcome. Out of an allocation of 20%, equivalent to 2.3 billion shares reserved for Kenyan individuals, only 464 million shares bids were received. This translates to 3.9% of total shares on offer. 70,000 Kenyans, we are told, are reported to have sent in their bids, an average of 6,640 shares per person. In monetary terms, individual investors invested 59,000 shillings on average. The performance was worse for foreign investors. Out of an allocation of 20% of the sale, foreign bids accounted for 0.03% only. And the Cabinet Secretary now blames Kenyans for the negative review and comments of the KPC IPO.
The interest from foreign investors went down because Kenyans are too much about discrediting their processes, even the ones they don't understand. In Kenya, everybody is a valuer. Everybody is a lawyer. We are all legal experts. We are all accountants. We want to analyze P&L and balance sheet, and we are saying how balance sheet is inaccurate, and you never went beyond class 8. You never did any accounting.
Well, we can argue on whether academic achievement grants a Kenyan more power over the other in holding an opinion. But that would not be necessary. What is certain is that the government had an elaborate machinery to market the KPC IPO, replete with millions of shillings worth of advertising across most platforms you can think of. All that complemented by an excited political class that dominates the two houses of parliament. They spent much of their time on microphones, hailing what a brilliant sale KPC IPO was, and how it was going to revolutionize the country's infrastructure once the National Infrastructure Fund is in place to receive the proceeds of the privatization. At the end of it all, only 4 billion shilling worth of investment was put in by Kenyans. Why? And what are Kenyans telling the government? Is it that they don't have money? Maybe not. And this is why. Towards the end of 2025, Safaricom Limited issued a green bond worth 15 billion shillings. It attracted a 276% subscription, translating to 41 billion shillings. Almost all the bids, at 96%, were from retail investors, meaning individuals who put in over 39 billion shillings at a minimum of 50,000 shillings per investor. That was just about 6 weeks before the KPC IPO opened. And now retail investors have put in 4 billion shillings only into KPC, a paltry 10% of what they did to the Safaricom bond. That should tell us something about investor confidence. That Kenyans are willing to bet with their wallets for what is clear, promising and devoid of politics. It's been 18 years since an extremely successful IPO of Safaricom, when the government of Kenya was selling off 10 billion shares, yielding a 532% of a subscription. Now, Kenya is a much expanded economy. More people have money and are more aware of how to invest their money. They are more educated anyway. And so when Kenyans choose not to invest into what is government's, it cannot be because they didn't study beyond the first 8 years of 844. It must be a deeper conversation that any discerning government should pick. It is about people's money, their wealth, and they will put it where they believe there is intention to grow an economy, not careers of proponents.
Anyway, fellow Kenyans, let me just give you a chance at the comment section to also tell me what you think. This news gang is one of the things that has really given the president and the government pressure to a point that, sometimes I normally feel like they are saying that watu kama either tunaweza washika, tunaweza ongea na SK Macharia, aseme kwamba this thing is supposed to be banned, then serikali itafurahi, because it really gives Kenyans a clear picture of what is going on, or what has been going on, or what's happening. You understand? So I don't know what to think. We missed Kaikai, but I know that next week we'll have Kaikai, and Kaikai will tell us more about his own kicker. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and please don't forget to subscribe. Until we meet again, I've been your host, Boniface Awino. Big.